Hello, hello. All right, some basic hip and glute and leg stretches if you're having hip pain, depending on where it is. So I'm sure you're already familiar with the down dog, but you can rotate this one into where you're tucking your leg underneath and you're sinking down into the swan. So this one, obviously, we've done before, but this is an awesome stretch. If you hold this for 20 or 30 seconds, and if you can, rotate over top of the knee and come in a little bit deeper, you'll get another angle of the glute. So I'm settling even deeper into this. I'm putting almost all my body weight. If you're not able to do that yet and you want to just hang out here, you absolutely can, or even just here. Some people's hips, depending on how they're sitting, it can actually be really, really tight. So even this motion is enough to be a little uncomfortable in the knee. However, if you're finding it's uncomfortable in the knee, shift your body weight, and sometimes just that much is enough. Otherwise, there's another glute stretch you can do. So from this one, we would come into our quad stretch. If you're not able to do that, another thing you can do is bring your weight here and bring your foot behind you. You don't have to try to balance, but you can just come here. And if you have the extra flexibility, you can always feel free to go even deeper into it. From here, I would typically sink back into down dog again. And this is where I really play with this. So I'll stretch out the hamstrings by trying to push my feet back. And then I'll actually transfer more of my weight onto my left leg, not all of it. I'm still using my right for balance. And then I'll transfer more of my weight to my right leg. And then just for a little extra calf action, I'll push my heels back as far as I can, and then I walk the dog. So I push in as I'm bending the other leg, push in. And you can do this for as long as you like. And then from here, you can switch into the other glute stretch. So I'm folding my leg underneath. You can see my hips coming underneath. I'm straightening that down, and I'm sinking into it. So right now I feel the stretch coming all the way across the back of the glute. So typically for myself, I would stay here for maybe 10 or 15 seconds, and then I would go deeper. But you'll actually feel when that glute starts to release a little bit, and then you can move again. So right there for me, I actually felt the glute release a bit. So I'm going to shift over top of it and take it a little bit deeper. And then I'm going to come into that quad stretch. You can also do this standing, leaning against something, if this is an uncomfortable position. Or like I said, you can shift that leg underneath. And for myself, I like to take this one pretty deep because I need the extra stretch. I've seen people take this right down to the floor. I find that's not my favorite for my traps. And then from here, another hip stretch that can be done is a hip stretch where you stack. So it's almost like a cross-legged position. It's not super, super comfortable, so you have to work your way into it. So what I do is I bring one leg up over top, and my ankle is not bent, as you can see. It's actually straight, and I can't get this leg down, but I want it here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rock my hip forward a little bit, and right away that starts to drop down. And I already feel a stretch here in the hip. But if you want to get more of a stretch, this is an external rotation stretch. I'm going to put my hand on top of my leg here, and I'm going to push my leg into my hand fairly firmly, and then rock it back a bit, and you'll notice that you can go a little deeper. This is called PNF. And now I can get my leg down. So I can put a little bit of weight on there if I want a deeper hip stretch. If I'm finding this is plenty, it is. You can just leave it up here. When I first started doing this stretch, I could handle this for about 5 seconds before I started to cramp. Don't push past the cramp stage. If you're finding that it's cramping, come out of it. Try it again. I've been trying to work on this for myself for months, and it's finally getting to the point where I can sit like this without being in a crazy amount of pain. I always find, however, switching out is challenging. So you're going to switch. This one's going to go underneath. And I always find the one now doesn't want to do it as much. So again, I'm stacked here, and you can see there's a huge difference. Weight is coming on top of my knee or my thigh. I'm pushing my leg into my hand, and then I'm able to get a little bit deeper. I'm going to push in again and go deeper. And I'll usually do this 2 or 3 times until I get that damn leg down, or I'll put a little bit of extra weight. And I say a little bit, like maybe 3 pounds of my upper body weight. It's more of a shift, but I can feel my hips opening up as I'm doing this. One of the ways that I did find this became more comfortable for me is that I started incorporating like a shoulder stretch of some description into it, or a neck stretch, because it sort of not only multi-purpose, but distracted me from the fact that this was not my favorite thing. So again, don't work past that cramp, because your body is telling you something when it's starting to cramp or feel like it's Charlie horsing, and just means you need your time into it. Like you're literally putting yourself in a position you pretty much never sit in or haven't since you were a child. Another hip opener that you might find if you're finding discomfort in the hip, you might find sometimes that right in the front, you're feeling very uncomfortable. A lot of us, if we're sitting all day, we're sitting in this position. So we end up with a shortened psoas, which is the muscle that runs on the inside of our pelvis, up into the back of our spine, down our front, and it connects the top and the bottom. So one way that you can stretch this out is I'm going to leave this leg behind me, and I'm going to step this one up really gently. I'm going to step it up, and I'm going to just sort of gently and slowly lunge into it until I start to feel a stretch here. And when I feel a stretch in here, I'm going to settle into it. I'm going to hang out here for a little bit. If it's uncomfortable on the back of your knee, feel free to do it on top of a towel. When this feels like it's starting to relax, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to reach my arm up over my head. And you'll feel that you get a deeper stretch in the groin. To come out of this position, I'm actually going to hinge back a little bit, and then I'm going to switch out. So again, I'm pushing this leg back. I'm basically in a kneeling position, bringing this one into a bit of a lunge. I'm going to lunge forward into it a little bit until I start to feel a stretch. This side is actually tighter for me, which is interesting. So I'm lunging forward into it. I'm going to wait till I start to feel this muscle open up a little bit. And then I'm going to take this hand, and I'm going to bring it up and overhead. And then to come out of it again, I'm going to balance myself, hinge back, and come out. One more thing that might be happening with the hips is sometimes it's the adductor muscles or our inner thighs that are the problem. And sometimes it's the abductor muscles. So I'm going to show you a couple more stretches here. The other variation to that glute stretch I was talking about earlier, if you're finding that you've got a lot of glute tightness, but you can't get into that pigeon or swan pose, is you can actually kick a leg up and you hang out here. And you can, again, push your leg into your hand and release it. This is a good stretch for the psoas. And the psoas runs along the back of your hip across the glutes. And sometimes that actually can give you something kind of like sciatic pain, or people think it's the sciatica rather. If you want to go deeper, you can grab a hold of this leg and bring it through. And if you are finding that the discomfort might be on the outside, you can actually straighten down, take this leg across your body, and you can actually stretch the QL here, which feels delicious, and you can stretch across the abductor here. And that feels very nice. Normally I would straighten this leg out, the bottom leg, but I'm out of space. So you can switch that out, prop your leg up, push into it till that feels nice and open. Again, you can push that leg into your hand, whatever works for you. If you want to take it deeper, you can, of course, go this way. And then if you needed a QL and a hip stretch, you can just drag this across. And you can obviously hold that for longer. One last stretch, if it is actually the inside of the leg, you can come into a position where you're essentially coming down into a bit of a squat. You're gonna lunge to one side until you start to feel a stretch on the inside of the leg here. And what I'll do normally is I'll balance on my one leg. You can of course bring it down to the ground if you like. This is almost, I look like I'm in my Black Widow pose maybe, or Spider-Man pose. Pretend I didn't say that. You can walk it over the other side and stretch that in as well. And you'll feel that you get a stretch right there in the groin. Again, another thing that can cause hip pain. I hope this really helps. If you had any hip discomfort and if you have any other issues, send me a message.